Hello, welcome to Gospel Minded. I'm Dr. Garrett Boyer. We'll spend the next few minutes talking about themes of psychology, behavioral health, emotional health, as they manifest themselves in the Gospel reading for today. Just like every Sunday, I want to note that this isn't in any way a substitute for any kind of counseling that you might be receiving or spiritual direction that you might be participating in, but we know that so often the world of psychology and our spirituality cross paths quite frequently, and that is the case again today as well. So our gospel today was from the Gospel of Mark, and I actually have the text here in front of me because I want to read it. It says, "And passing along by the Sea of Galilee, he saw Simon and Andrew, the brother of Simon, casting a net into the sea, for they were fishermen. And Jesus said to them, 'Follow me, and I will make you fishers of men.' And immediately they left their nets and followed him." Just a fascinating few verses there at the beginning of the gospel for today. So here they are, their livelihood is the fishing industry, and Jesus comes and says, "Follow me." And they, without hesitation, cast down their nets and follow after Jesus. Pretty remarkable. I was reading a commentary on this passage, and one of the notes that it made was that in the original language that this was written in, this invitation of Jesus to come follow me had really a significant weight, and it just highlighted the power of that invitation, follow me. And so if that is true, I suppose it's more reasonable why then Simon and Andrew would be so enthusiastic to cast down their nets and without delay follow after the Lord. Really a beautiful and remarkable passage from the beginning of today's gospel. So that's at the beginning of Jesus's ministry. What happens by the time we get to the end? What happens to Peter and Andrew and the other disciples? Well, we know. So I want to juxtapose today's gospel to the end of John's gospel, John chapter 21. So the apostles, Peter was with Jesus from the beginning. They went through his public ministry, his trial, his crucifixion, his death, and then the resurrection. And Jesus manifested himself to the apostles after he had died, after he had then risen from the dead. So Peter had seen all of this. But what happens in John chapter 21? After all of this had happened, he says, "I'm going fishing." He's returning back to what he was familiar with, what he was comfortable with. And we don't really know why. Maybe he was overwhelmed. Maybe he was confused. It's hard to say. But I think that reality of what Peter experienced is something that you and I experience as well. Certainly spiritually, how often has it happened that we decide, I'm going to commit to the Lord. I'm going to put my best foot forward and start living a good, virtuous life. It sounds really good at the beginning when we say that, but what happens as we start going through the grind? What happens on the day-to-day? When somebody says something that annoys us, when our family starts to get under our skin, when things start piling up at work and we get stressed, are we able to live out that commitment that we made and that sounded so good early? I think this happens with confession. We go to confession and we receive absolution, and we promise to put our best self out there to avoid the nearest occasion of sin. But what happens is we fall back into those same traps. We fall for those same temptations. So this is definitely something that we experience spiritually. But I think the same thing is relevant for us psychologically. And when we talk about our behavioral health, I can't tell you how many times as a therapist I have witnessed this. My patients will come in, they've finally gotten to a point where they are ready to start making some changes in their life. They want to see things look different. So they'll come and they'll begin the process of therapy, they'll articulate what they want to see happen, what kind of changes they want to make. And at the beginning of therapy, a lot of times people will experience great progress. They'll see some remarkable transformation, a lot of times early on in the course of therapy, which is excellent. But what happens, and I've seen it time and time again, is as time goes on, the commitment that they had at the beginning, the kind of zeal that they had at the early onset of therapy starts to fade as the wear and tear of day-to-day life starts to build up, the challenges and stressors of everything that we deal with on a daily basis. It just makes it hard to really stick it out and be faithful to that commitment. So why am I saying this, right? Peter is a great example. Early on, convicted, determined, enthusiastic. I'm gonna cast my nets aside and change my life for the better. And after a while, after all the dust settled, he's going back to that old way of life. And the same thing happens with you and me. Spiritually, it happens with us with choices we make as well. I make the commitment that I want to do better, I want to change, I want to see things happen differently, and I'll go down that path for a while, and maybe eventually I'm going to start kind of falling back into old habits, or start falling for traps that I had been caught in at another time previously in life. I bring this up because I want to say, first of all, that this is normal, perfectly normal. What Peter experienced in his life thousands of years ago is not unlike what you and I go through today. It's this constant back and forth of, I want to do better, I want to be my best, and it's really hard. And that is perfectly understandable. We just do the very best we can as we make our journey through life. And consider this. Simon Peter had the benefit of literally walking beside Jesus, of eating dinner with him, of witnessing with his own two eyes the miracles, of seeing the risen Lord. We don't get that benefit. The Lord manifests himself to us through word and sacrament, through other people. Is it not reasonable or understandable that we too would have difficulties following up on our commitments, having a hard time sticking it out with the promises that we made to ourselves or to others? So it's understandable. So what do we do? At the same time, as a psychologist, my patients will say, well, I want it to stick. I want it to last. Okay, what are some things we can do to try and make it last? A few things, just thoughts, things to consider. First of all, be okay with the fact that there's the back and forth. Like I already referenced, once we make that commitment, it is a process to keep at it and to make good choices to live out that commitment, and just be at peace with the fact that there's a dialogue of this back and forth. So that's one thing. Second of all is, once you make that commitment, or you decide you want to change or see things different in your life, plan it out. Have a game plan or a strategy for how that's going to work, how that's going to impact you, how that's going to impact the people around you. For example, if I say that I want to lose 15 pounds, but I am stocking in my pantry foods that make that hard, that's not a well thought out plan. And then how does that impact other people in my house? Do they have to make the same changes? So I think thinking it through and having a strategy in place is a very useful thing. And then it's okay to dream big. It's okay to have big aspirations, but then breaking it down into manageable bits. things that we can achieve, things that we can do in a reasonable time. It sounds kind of abstract or lofty to say, I want to do this, and it's a big ideal or a big aspiration. It makes more sense to break it down into more manageable bites that we can chew on and work through more effectively. And if we chip away and keep working, eventually we can get to the top of that mountain and complete that big task. And then the other piece that I would like to just reference with this as well is make sure to give yourself some rewards. We talk about behaviorism a lot in therapy, in psychology, and we know that when we do behaviors that are rewarded positively, the likelihood that we'll continue those behaviors is higher. And so when you find yourself doing a good job, moving towards a goal, achieving a task that you had set out to do, give yourself a pat on the back. And I don't know what exactly that means for you, but if you're rewarding yourself for doing something right, it's going to help you as you go along. So just a few things to think about for this week. Peter is a great example of what we all are like. We want to put our best foot forward. We want to walk side by side with the Lord. It's easy to fall back into old habits. It's understandable. But what we can do as Christians and as people who genuinely desire to be the very best we can be is continue to get back up, continue to journey, continue to press on, even though we have these stumbles along the way. It's natural, it's normal, and it's something that we can work with and work through as we progress and press on the journey. So I hope that's helpful for you. I thank you for being with me today. Again, Dr. Garrett Boyer at Gospel Minded. Take care.